My name is Stephen Canetto, and I'm the Administrator of Systems here at the MSU Libraries. We're very excited to have you here. We're also very excited to have our first presenters this morning, and we're very pleased to have Duncan Aldrich and Tod Colegrove here from University of Nevada, Reno. And they're going to be talking to us today about toys or potent tools for student engagement. Duncan is the, if you'll see in your program, Duncan is the @1 Administrator and the Emerging Technologies Coordinator. And Tod is the head of De La Mar Science and Engineering Library at the University of Nevada, Reno. We're very excited to have you all here and looking forward to your presentation. So if you would, please give a warm welcome to Tod.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us. I'll start the session off with a little bit of background and context, and Tod is going to follow with some examples of some of the technologies we're working with, and also with a little bit more context. Context is always exciting. I'm going to spend a few minutes just with this slide up here because later on we're going to be going through far too many slides. Give you guys a little break here. If you have any questions, I like that. The last presenter, shout them out. Just please interrupt and wave at us so we know you're needing some help with answers. In way of a little bit of background, I'm a confirmed relativist, pragmatist. And what is a relativist, pragmatist? I just made it up, I think. Basically, I've all my life just said, let's go with what works. I don't, follow any particular philosophies. The debt ceiling debates that we've had recently, where people are espousing this or that, has driven me a little bit crazy because it seems maybe there's just a middle ground that people can figure out something that works. And what works for me in a library setting, I'm basically in a customer service role, is what is relevant to our customers. And when I say what is relevant to our customers, this was alluded to in the last presentation some. It's not what's relevant to us as librarians, but what is relevant, it's not what we think is relevant to our students, but what do our students believe is relevant. Now, Tod is a physicist first. He has his PhD in physics. His area of physics is astronomy. And about a year and a half ago, he got his MLIS so that he could go from being a professional technology-oriented person in the library to joining the ranks of those of us who are librarians. Okay. One thing that both of us believe in sincerely is change. Change is going to happen, and if we don't go with the flow, we're going to just get washed up and flooded out. So when we've had the chance to look at new technologies, emerging technologies, we usually jump first, and then other people say, wait a minute, hold on, what is it we're doing? So maybe that's why we have a library administration. Anyway, we've worked together for 5 years. The first 4, Tod worked for me, and we made a really good team because with my philosophy of let's do what works, I was wide open to what sometimes seemed like sort of crazy ideas that Tod would say, let's do this or let's do that. As an eternal optimist, he's really moved us along. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start clicking through some of the slides and provide a little context. I didn't put it, I had it on this slide originally. This is a definition of 21st century literacies at a site called Noodle, Noodle. And I thought this was, I've seen hundreds or dozens at least of definitions of 21st century literacies. And we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about 21st century literacies other than to provide a little bit of context for the rest of the presentation. So rather than talking about these things, I'm simply going to go on to the next slide and just mention what appear to be, to me, to be some of the traditional library-supported literacies. Basic language, cultural literacy, information. Anybody do instruction here? We talk forever about information literacy and news media literacy. I guess I wasn't exactly sure what that is, so I threw it in. But we have some new directions, and putting my thoughts together for the presentation today, I thought I would go in a new direction. So bear with me on this. I decided to go upside down. Actually, so where am I, guys? I'm in Prezi. This is my first Prezi, so you're going to have to excuse stuff flying around a lot because it's fun. But it might make you dizzy, so my apologies for that. The rest of the day, we're going to talk more about what we think are some of the new directions in 21st century literacy that we're pursuing at the University of Nevada, Reno, and think is just generally what libraries will hopefully be pursuing in the future. Visual literacy, which I will be showing some of the things we've done regarding visual literacy, and Todd will pick up more on the scientific and the mathematical literacy. Oh, so you already figured out I'm using Prezi. I'd also show you I'm not very good at cutting and pasting. Okay, what's an At One? I'm the At One administrator. The At One is the first floor in our new library, which opened 3 years ago. And the name At One, why do we use the at sign? Represented to the dean at that time, technology. And the one is because we're on the first floor. But we moved in 3 years ago. We actually started some of the operations we're doing today about 5 years ago, when in the basement of our old building, we opened what we called the DataWorks Lab. And the focus of the DataWorks Lab was on data visualization. And one thing that we put in the lab was a poster printer. And a poster printer that students could actually come in, create posters. We thought they'd be doing more or less scientific or GIS, geographic mapping sorts of posters. And guess who the first people who really discovered us were the nursing students. So we did all kinds of really cool things with pictures of cancer and stuff like that. So anyway, you can see we had cramped quarters. About 5 years ago, we hired Todd, and that's when we began having all kinds of fun toys. He said, we need a laminator. And I said, Todd, what we're going to do, driver's licenses? Why do we need a laminator? And he said, if we get one, they'll come. So, guess what we did? We bought a second laminator, a pouch laminator. And again, I asked Todd, well, why do we want a pouch laminator? And he said it's because they can mount their posters on foam core, which is a sort of a styrofoam-like poster board. And with a heat process, it adheres the posters to the foam. And so guess what? That's one of our biggest lines of business right now. I should mention really quickly that the posters that we print for students, we just charge for the ink, the paper, the foam core, and a little bit for student labor. And that's state regulations. We can't make a profit. And Kinko's does call us and ask us, to tell us that we're undermining their sales. And we say, well, whatever. So we moved into the new building, and Todd said we need a second printer. So we went out and bought a 60-inch wide, really nice printer that has a The ink is 200-year ink. The paper is acid-free. It really works well. And in the @ONE area, every PC in @ONE has the CS5 Adobe Suite with Photoshop, Illustrator, Adobe Acrobat, Adobe Professional. And so we have really nice software that our students use to develop posters. Guess what's the #1 software they use to develop posters? It's not Photoshop. It's PowerPoint. Has anybody made a PowerPoint poster? Yeah.
I didn't actually use PowerPoint, I just got a Mac, and so I used Keynote, which is their version of PowerPoint, and I was able to download some templates that you can change colors and columns and stuff. It was really, really good.
Cool. So what kind of visual presentations are our students doing? What's the volume? In the spring semester this year, we printed on our 2 poster printers 8,119 posters, which came out to about 70 a day, which really amazed me, because if you'd asked me, I would have said, well, on a busy day, we probably do 80 or 90, but on an average day, I think we do 40 or 50. So we really get crammed in, especially if you can read that far away, one of those weeks is really busy toward the end of the year. So also @ONE, we check out all kinds of equipment, HD camcorders, digital cameras. Yeah.
Yeah, if with that kind of volume, do students need to make an appointment for y'all to be able to print that kind of volume, or what's your turnaround time?
No, yes, no, yes. No, but savvy instructors, when I'm giving a talk, or Todd's giving a talk on how to make a good poster, it's a new library instruction. I like it. Anyway, the good instructor will say, hey, you didn't mention when they should get the poster to you if they want it printed to hand in on time. So what we tell classes is 2 or 3 days ahead, because half of the time one of our students is going to go, maybe you want to do that a little bit different, and don't be insulted or whatever. But what our policy is we'll have it out by noon the next day. So, but if it's not a good poster and they have to rework it, it's different. Okay, so we also have a dynamic media lab, dynamic meaning motion, and we have 18 top-end Macs in there that have software like Final Cut Pro, which is what professional studios use to edit their videos, shots. It also has the Adobe Suite, the Master Suite, which includes Flash and Adobe After Effects and a lot of high-end software. We have Logic, the music software. We also in that area have a sound recording booth. We thought for podcasts, guess what it is? We've had ukuleles and choral groups. It's pretty much fun. Okay, I brought these pictures up because what really makes @ONE work isn't me, it isn't Todd, who's no longer there. He's over in the science branch library. It's our students, and our students are staffing the desk. We usually have 2 or 3 students there. And they've just acquired incredible skills because we leave them out there and just say, figure it out, we'll help you if we can or when we can. And I usually ask my students, how do I do this in Photoshop? Because they've become so good. So just a few of our students, and I brought that close up so you can see that's not a Miller High Life cap. I'm the boss. And this is, Todd will talk a little bit more about the Arduino, which one of our students is working with. And I brought this along. I took this picture with my cell phone the day before I came. She was really proud of her hat. So, with that, I'm going to pass this over to Todd to talk. This is the poster production area at @ONE, by the way. So, Todd?
Thank you. You'll have to bear with me. I'm not, unfortunately, really loud and not super comfortable with microphone, so if you're not hearing me, please just holler or wave your hands and I'll remind me. I will come back to this, but you'll notice this is the day-to-day workflow when they're printing those 50 to 70 to 80 or 100 posters on the at one floor. And the secret we'll get to real shortly. Just to touch on a couple of the things Duncan mentioned, he's absolutely right. I taught the introductory astronomy and physics courses on the campus of UNR for 7 of the past 10 years. Around 5 years ago, got tangled up with Duncan in the libraries when the then Dean of Libraries, Steve Zink, introduced this concept of a knowledge center. And it's about producing the knowledge and creating about this learning. And I discovered in a period of about 6 months that I had apparently been separated at birth from this family of librarians. But just to clarify a couple of backgrounds there, and prior to my teaching here, I actually, when I was doing my PhD in astrophysics, did extensive work with Hubble Space Telescope, the International Ultraviolet Explorer satellite, several of the flagship products that you guys run out here on the East Coast. So back and forth quite a lot. And in between, spent about 15 years in private industry developing things like internet service providers and co-location, web service companies. So dangerously broad, like all of you do all of these things. So where we're going to go in this presentation, which is dangerously full of multimedia stuff, and it's also back in PowerPoint. I promised in the proposal here that we were going to talk about how we can actively redefine, and as offensive as the words saying, redefining this library from that quiet warehouse of books into a lively place of learning, a place where everyone goes under the bus and is actively learning this stuff, and how we can deliberately build, much along the lines of what Aaron was speaking to earlier with this pyramid structure with our website, how we need to get that same structure happening in our libraries. We want our libraries at the end of the day to be this destination, this vibrant collection, this portal. In other words, we want to be where Dave Lankus would say the conversation is. And just keeping this as academic as we can, you've got the citation right there with the article. A number of you may be familiar with the book that he was just published from the MIT Press, the Atlas, the New Librarianship. Very intriguing. It's not the sort of book you're going to read from start to finish. It's actually like an atlas. And this is really the goal where we're going. You see, much of my history with the library has been, well, I guess I should reframe that to say that we're all very familiar with the library the way it has been the last 100 years. And the last 100 years, we've allowed, because the cost of printing materials has come down so aggressively, and we've all been aggressively trying to duplicate one another's collections, we've allowed the collections stacked on all of these shelves to drive out the users that were in the library and far more common before that. This is actually a depiction, if you're ever in the Vatican, that was painted by Raphael. But this is actually the library at Alexandria, or a big part of it. This is why people would go to the great library at Alexandria. I want to point out that you'll notice this person right here, standing unobtrusively, is the depiction of Hypatia, who was actually the librarian. They had a librarian there. Hello, that's where we're supposed to be, not in the back of the house, cataloging and doing other things that, sadly, absolutely need to happen. But we need to get out and actively engaged, along with the other philosophers that we all know, Plato, Socrates, all of the famous names that were there. So I'm coming back to what exactly is the collection. Back then, this is a depiction from Cosmos, actually, of what the collection looked like. Scrolls, as it migrated along through time, for a substantial part of the time, library collections looked like this. They were literally chained to the shelves because they're expensive. They were extraordinarily expensive. And the reason why the libraries were as valuable as they could be is because we bought those expensive things and made them available to anyone that wanted to come to this. Well, we've shed the chains, but we've driven out the users. And the core question is, where is that conversation? How do we re-engage it? I like to joke, actually, that they're beginning to discover the magnitude of the mistake that they made in hiring me as the head of the De La Mare Science and Engineering Library. Because just within the past year, we've actually taken the collection that spanned 4 floors of the library and moved over half of it, 55% of it were printed and bound journals that our faculty and students didn't want to access anymore. We were warehousing it in the most prime real estate possible, so we moved it up into the automated retrieval system that's part of the new Mathewson Knowledge Center, so that if people really wanted to go get it, if for some reason the apocalypse happened and the journals that we had paid for the back files were no longer accessible, we could actually pull it out and retrieve the original things. So now knowing that it's safe and sound in the automated retrieval system, which I prefer to call the 4-story tall robot, the giant robot that has the stickers on it that say no riders, I think just to taunt people with us, is taking good care of it. And we've opened up the rest of the library space. The balance of the collection all fits in the compact shelving in a tight little corner in the basement. And the kids and the faculty are flooding in. It's literally coming alive. And part of it is by analyzing what we mean by this core word. Now, if any of you, this is something, again, Duncan introduced me to. I never had the remotest interest in etymology. Where do these words come from? The Oxford English Dictionary. Wow, it's just amazing. But this is probably the best definition, in my opinion, that I've run across of what technology is, because the word technology, although it's the common buzz phrase and we hear it every place, Kevin Kelly just recently published this book. Kevin Kelly, one of the founders of Wired, and really quite a technology maker. For any of you that are interested, he describes it as a word that really didn't enter our common language until after 1939. It was not used in any of the State of the Union addresses in the last 200 years. The very first use of it, he traces it back to Aristotle's treatise, where he actually made up the word, like we might do, like Duncan has been known to do, pulling some of these words together. Technology is a combination of one word that means art, skill, craft, the ability, your cleverness to do stuff, combined with a second word, speech or literacy. Kind of explains why as librarians we're so often talking about information literacy and this literacy and that literacy and all of these literacies that we're so busy naming. We don't spend the time that we need to actually getting to the point of getting literate and helping other people be literate. Even the book itself is a technology. You've seen several examples already. The scrolls, a technology. The codex was a major, the book format itself was a major development. All of these are technologies. The library has been in the business of buying technology for multiple people to use for some time. Why do we get concerned about buying widgets sometimes? Here's an example, something that I used as the best metaphor that I could shortly after, again, I was hired to head that library up. I came across a friend of mine that built this device. It's actually an electric vehicle that he built over 10 years ago for use for utilitarian reasons. Actually, it normally has a giant parasol over there when he's out on the playa at Burning Man. If any of you are going to Burning Man, definitely keep an eye out for him, let him know that you saw it. But I said, would you be open to my displaying that in the library? Oh, he was delighted, and he didn't put it in the storage unit. So he brought it down. I had a big empty atrium, and we literally drove it into the library and parked there. And people started asking about it. The librarians actually initially were gassed. The concern was political correctness. And I said, it's inspired by this movie. This bomb was supposedly headed for Russia, not Japan, although this is actually an almost exact replica of Little Boy, one of the first 2 atomic weapons that was dropped on Hiroshima. Its owner tells me that the people that are most interested in it out on the playa and that he runs into are Japanese people that come running up just so enthusiastic and excited. They want to ride it. So I said, hey, don't think we have a problem. And we brought it in, and sure enough, people started talking about it. Here's some of our more traditional population. 2 substantial donors that have contributed over $500,000 to this library's collection over the past 30 years, $10,000 at a time came by. Russ and Peggy Boynton are also alumni of the university, chemists. They're scientists. I have to bring it back to one point when it goes to the conversation. One of the things, there was an article that I read just about a week ago that came out. It turns out that that scientists do science, according to this article, exactly the same way that 5-year-old children learn about their world and discover and go about trying things. And so all of a sudden it started making sense how I've been talking about embracing this concept of childlike play and wonder with the universe. Russ and Peggy Boynton, although they're advanced in years, have that same spirit as well, as do all of the science and engineering faculty and students. We have a common language, and so they're excited about it. So I'll point out actually on this slide, within weeks we took it out on the quad out in front of the library, which is sort of this big quadrangle. It's a Jeffersonian campus, although it's land grant, it's designed after Jefferson's principles. We took it out in the fall and started driving it around. The guy seated on it is the guy who actually built it. And people kept coming up. And so we organized an event around it. Actually, to the left there, you'll see the associate dean of the College of Science, along with, high-hitting names across the campus that were there. And hundreds of kids were showing up and taking rides on it. And they had one thing in common. They were all from the sciences and engineering. We did get a few people from the liberal arts that were very interested. But it was mostly science and engineering, so that was fair game. Now, just touching on this quickly, I'll point out that the large format poster printers are in the back. This is also a color printer, a scanner. There's a large format scanner right here. And you'll notice there's always activity. These are the student workers typically on this desk. Rarely you see staff. You see staff like myself and Duncan and the few brave souls. But one of the rules on the @1 desk is everyone goes under the bus. Everyone. I mean, especially the faculty. When the only way that Duncan, and although he's absolutely right, if you pull up the policy page on it, they don't promise that they'll get a poster printed in anything less than 24 hours. But they will always shoot to have it to you within the hour, and generally hit it, probably about 90% of the time. I have to show you another example that I really got a kick out of. This was a Facebook post from one of the communities actually that calls that one home. The University Computer Gaming Club. And you'll notice the high profile of some of this stuff. The artwork is actually very nice. Every Thursday, they meet there and have the most blood-curdling sounds come out of these rooms where they all get there and start doing their gaming and just blowing
Now,
up.
Michelle, new application that we implemented this semester.
Now, as long as we're in
Libraries have shown these
more old school
Here's how
stuff,
they get modified to make it a little easier to reuse.
one of our more dramatic
It's
organizations about 3 years ago, the Microsoft Surface tables. You've seen several of
Yeah,
these.
similar tags into the front page.
The only reason we were able to get these is because our dean said,
onto the
I think
surface
we need to get
corresponding
them.
and disappear.
So
These
we
images
said,
can move
okay, and
to
then
these
decided
sides.
to make them useful. Our applications development librarian actually designed and built this
And that's
program,
the students can easily turn labels along.
the anatomy program. It's basically a high-tech flashcard program.
Because it is very easy for multiple users.
And
to
it
access
has been
this.
in use every day by the nursing.
It's how nursing experiences
nursing
students to work together in groups to study.
Every day
disease.
the semester's been in session for the past.
As you can see,
Going on
different tags on different labs will bring up entirely different sets of images.
What they tell me is it's changed the way that they're learning this stuff. So you'll notice that they've got physical plastic models that they're looking at, but they're also engaging and going hands-on with
Labs are
the
cool,
names
but
of
also
it.
sort of.
And they're learning this stuff in a way that actually the problem that we have to
The
deal
next
with
phase of this
now.
project, we intend
is-
to tags on each of these models.
And you'll notice the QR codes, not the QR codes, but the Microsoft specific codes on the bottom. The problem that we're having to deal with is that these things weren't designed to live forever, and they're dying, and yet they're so critical that now we've got to figure out a way to support that on a different platform, like maybe an iPad platform or a tablet, something to try to keep this alive. Now, I should also underline Duncan's point. In the classes that I've taught,
Thanks for watching.
it became crystal clear to me that if you have a question or a thought, the time to answer it is right then. So by all means, interrupt, because otherwise, if your brain is like mine, it freezes and doesn't go forward. But let's resolve those and get those individually out of the way. It's also known as the giant iPod thingy when people are asking for it and looking for it. Another example with the Microsoft Surface, we actually had one of these die recently, and we had to take the one that we had in Delamere back up to the Knowledge Center because there were hundreds of nursing students in a panic because they really were quite confident that they weren't going to be able to learn this without this. So while we were resuscitating the other one, it moved up there. But the one that we had in Delamere was in regular use with the computer science and engineering kids, where it was part of a semester-long project. The library owned the technology. Their faculty were sending their kids in there to write programs, with the gaming programs that would interact with the interface to leverage the whole thing. And the library was again at the center of the story, which I think is a natural. The library is kind of like Switzerland. We're the only folks on campus, I would argue, that can pull this off, that where everyone can come together. One of the examples that combines multiple layers that's more recent, we had several flavors of this technology on available for students to check out. And we said, well, why don't we market to them? Why don't we set up an e-reader bar and give them a chance to go hands-on with it? A number of voices came back saying, well, we're not Best Buy. Why would we do that? Because we have the stuff and we can. And it gives us an opportunity to sneak up on the kids as they're interacting with it and begin talking with them. You'll notice that on that bar, there are 5 devices, and 1 out of 37 people that came through the gate went physically hands-on with this stuff. Not that we were selling it, but it was new, shiny technology. And let's face it, we all like new, shiny technology we want to look at. This is the example, again, of the library having one $200 or $300 widget enabling a community of 17,000 kids to be able to not have to buy it, but to be able to decide which one of these they wanted to buy before they move on to the next step. And at the same time, this movie actually was shot using, and you'll see that's actually the YMCA. Those are actually some of our student workers on the one. Introduced multiple different levels. The photography, this time lapse that's happening here is actually shot with a helmet camera. A helmet camera as if that you would check out that you could strap on your helmet and go rappelling off a cliff or snorkeling in Lake Tahoe. It also does time-lapse stills. And so we mounted it there. And in order to build this, now you have to talk with students and get them engaged about how do you make this movie? Or what are things that are involved here? You'll notice the frames dropping out. This is a transcoding problem. This is a problem with the codec that if you never ran across it, you would never be aware of it. And yet it's in use every day to produce evening news. It's in use every day to upload a YouTube video by our kids. They either know about it or they don't know about it. That's a fundamental literacy that we need to and can deal with in the library. On the other side of that e-reader bar, it looks like this. This is one of the students that's working on it. Just last week, actually. And the video is the product of the software development that he's working with. Not only is it snapping pictures and measuring depth, it's keeping track of who is whom based on the color, assigning the color when they walk into the frame. Why is this of any interest at all? Well, it's a $129 widget. It's a toy. You would not believe the amount of resistance that we face buying these for the library. Somehow it was as if we were encouraging kids to play. That's all. No, I mean, the kids really want to go hands-on with these devices. What we're going to have, what we already have here actually, is a $129 open source people counter that you can adjust. Now, going on to the next step, here's another piece of it. Actually, let me go back. Just to clarify, not only does this sensor keep track of who the separate people are and assign them a separate color so we can identify them, we can count them. Yeah. Well, we won't get to see that yet. But let me just speak to that, though, because it's something you're going to hear more of here in the real near future. One of the things that we do a lot of is counting people and counting things in the library. We count the number of people that come through the gate. That's not particularly useful unless you can put it into context. On the e-reader bar, with this counter, what we're doing is how many people came up to within 2 feet and went hands-on with this device or that device. How many people came up to the reference desk and asked a question? How long were they there? How quickly did they get their questions answered? These are questions that are very meaningful to us on all of our service desks, but we can't afford to spend the $5,000 that's costed by even one sensor that comes in that neighborhood of the woods. But we can afford to spend $129 for a sensor. That's what these kids are doing. And that's where I'm really excited about. So as soon as that becomes available, you'll definitely know about it. You can download it on the open source. Some other stuff that they're doing is, you'll notice other students here, these are actually a couple high school kids too, that are on the @1 floor that I grabbed another student and said, this is awesome, would you mind shooting a clip out of it? And she did. It was within an hour she had this video clip. This is demoing what he was doing with the Kinect sensor. And he's demonstrating several different modes of working with it. Now, this is information literacy on the level that they go to in computer science and engineering. Not that we do in the lab, but we can use it and leverage it some more. So not only is the Kinect keeping track of the individual people who they are, He's now actually throwing overlays on there in terms of their body parts, and this is their hands and their elbows and their legs, so we can identify what's going on here. And even further, we can snag something like this is attached to their hand. They picked up a device and use it for software implementation, drawing lines on the screen. Another example of some technology that is actually now part of our lendable collection, the AR drone quadricopter, which I think, as a $300 purchase, so far is the one that I'm most proud of. When I saw that, more importantly, when I saw that it had an API, that spoke immediately to me in terms of the students in the engineering that already can program these, and the students in the math and the sciences that would be interested in using it. This $300 toy has 2 cameras in it, several sensors built in terms of altitude, height, the whole 9 yards. You can drive it from your iPhone, your tablet, a PC, a web phone if you want to, and it's shiny technology. The kids think it's really cool. So we immediately bought one, made it available, and then I saw this post go by on Facebook. We have one of these in the UNR library. It's awesome. Not clear whether she's talking about the helicopter or the library. You know, take your pick. But they kind of go together. And related community involvement with the AR drone was just this past summer where we ran the Smallwood Multimedia Boot Camp, actively going out to high schools and looking to find students that had any interest or talent in AV, audio, visual sorts of stuff, that we might be able to get tooled up to work with us on the At One desk when they enrolled at UNR or college. So we had applied for a grant, and we actually did get the grant. So we have the boot camp, and we're on to the next phase with it, where the dozen or so kids that the grant paid to come on campus, and they spent a week getting brought up to speed and having access with all the things that we had at one.
2 weeks.
Two weeks, good heavens, yeah. Time flies. But the 2 weeks that they spent there, involving faculty and staff within the libraries, how do you edit video, how do you do a number of these things, including taking this AR drone helicopter out, something that I never did, but they took it out and let it loose in the atrium of the Knowledge Center itself. My goodness. I heard about that later on in the day when the dean came to me and said, oh, Alden, the building security manager, who told me in no uncertain terms that I was never allowed to do that. When they took it in, well, and for good reasons, because of the way that in the new building, the way it's designed, if the helicopter were to go above a certain level in the atrium, when it goes up 4 stories tall, it would trigger the automatic evacuation fans that are like jet engine turbine fans, which would pull the helicopter immediately to its death and call the firemen and evacuate the building. Thankfully, it didn't break that level. But our new dean of library said, I just assumed it was you, and said it was okay. That was terrifying. But they took it out in the atrium. Why? Because they were leveraging the video. In fact, that's the next step. One of these drone helicopters we bought for $300 has led to now 3. We had the computer science and engineering department say, that's great. We bought a couple more. Can we put them in your library so the kids can use it? Sure. So now we've got a spare that they're actually hacking, cutting off the nose of it and putting a separate camera on it so that they can fly it around and get high-def video. These are multimedia new sorts of literacy things. And I have to tell you that the most interest that I've had have been from the faculty. From the faculty especially in the sciences and engineering. From the geographers coming up and saying, wow, one of them studies desert tortoises, which means she has to hike around ranges of miles and miles in the desert to try to locate where these turtles are and do the geography. You know, could I use that to just go fly this around? Oh no, this is a $300 toy. There's a $10,000 one that's yeah. They haven't gone for it yet. Another thing I'm really excited with, or was excited to be a part of, the flagship class of the computer science and engineering. And again, we're all about outreach, right? So this is my first year as the new librarian in the science and engineering library. And somehow I got embedded in the flagship course. This is the capstone course of the entire program. The kids in computer science and engineering spend literally an entire year working on the project. I was directly involved, and the library was directly involved with two. This is all of their projects with two of them. Why? Not because I was really more technological or cooler or had the best journals, but because I had a $300 helicopter. Right. You know, and with an API, which they use. And in fact, these are the courses. I also have to point out, and it's a coincidence, or it's maybe an associated coincidence, but the professor that leads that program was just awarded the Outstanding Undergraduate Research Mentor for the entire campus. The libraries played a part of that. This, I'm going to link just directly off to it to keep that a little more under control. This is one of the programs that they did. And each of the kids on these teams, oh, we can't get to the thing. Is YouTube blocked on this campus? No. Well, we'll make do with the lower end version that's in here. Not to get into too many of the details, but basically suffice it to say that killer drone helicopters are now one step closer to reality, thanks to these kids. You're talking about a quadricopter that is flying under its own autonomous control. You could set it loose in this room, basically fly over someone's head and use the down-facing camera and say, that head, I want you to follow that head no matter where they go. And it will do that. It actually will do that regardless of if you turn your head sideways or tilt it down, because you can partially obscure over half of the thing, and it's using a brand new algorithm that came out of Australia that's going to be published in the ACM. To do that, but this is all with a $300 toy. This is the kind of thing that we can do in the library. And they're demoing this, and it's all very sort of dry and academic, as only we can be. But I have to tell you that something just came to my attention here within the last hour. There's a conference coming up that was just announced, and it's funded by Dartmouth. These are important names to your folks that are out there getting research dollars. They were launching a separate program to basically do exactly what these two teams already did for their senior project. If you want to form a team and put your hat in, the grand prize is basically $100,000. I mean, they'll give you $100,000 if you can pull this off. Of course, the nefarious reason they want to use it for is they want to use it out in the field, where they say, okay, track this person, follow them, or when they have to bug out, drone helicopter pick up and follow them wherever they go, even if you're under strange circumstances. The point that I'm making is that industry and the funding infrastructures are already paying for this stuff, paying for what we're doing. So just to move that along to make sure we get to the next step, one of the more recent additions to the collection, this was the, I have to tone this down.
We'll want to leave some time for questions.
Oh, I apologize. Okay, yes. The Lego Mind Smarts NXT 2.0 kits. the most recent addition, two of the more recent additions to the collections. Robotics, programming, it's a toy, it's cool, it's shiny technology. But this is just a screenshot on the right-hand side of a search in the library catalog for Lego. I think it was just Lego. Well over 500 resources across the state, and lots of them available through the vendor that we would check with. Look at the link tags here. You've got engineering, science, success in business. These are all things that are all tied together, back to that sense of playful creativity, that are real resources, that are all traditional library resources. But they can also be leveraged for the sorts of literacies that Duncan is introducing and working with now one. This is a perfect example. This is what happens when you take a couple of your kids and turn them loose with it. Which is literally what I did this summer. I said, here, go play, do something cool that you can do with this, and just give them a little bit of guidance. And within a matter of days, they had assembled this full-frame video. Note all of these high-order skills that you have to pay real serious money for if you're hiring people out in private industry. These are skills that all of our kids on the desks are picking up on a daily basis and leveraging in the field. I have to point out, well, this is my favorite example, actually. Google's Liquid Galaxy. You can have a Liquid Galaxy for about $80,000. You can put one together with duct tape and old cast-off computers for essentially just a little bit of time. So it's sort of like when you were the kid, or you might have kids, and you're buying this cool new toy, and they're more interested in the box than what was in the box. Same sort of thing. Having these old cast-off computers with the software that's open source, now we can use this to leverage exploring data sets in the library. And I think that gives us time to get on to the next step. So basically what the whole point of this is to, again, everyone goes under the bus. It's a matter of beginning the conversation. It's a matter of me embracing my own inner geek and saying, this is cool, this is exciting. When I show that I'm excited about this, a number of the kids that you're working with, not all of them, but some of them will respond to that. They'll resonate with it, and they'll come to you. And encourage their nascent enthusiasm. Don't be, we're also in academia, we're so hung up on this concept of being wrong. What if you're wrong? Wrong is what makes science. You have to be wrong. You have to be wrong 99 times before you're right once. If you don't get those 99 out of the way, you've got real troubles. You show that you can be wrong, let them be wrong, and encourage their awesomeness. And then the kids that are awesome begin to make the other ones feel left out. And they step up to the plate. So anyway, I don't mean to run over long, but by all means, if there's any questions, please don't hesitate to touch base with me. Well, I'm almost certain we'll be at that event tonight as well. But shoot me an email, send me a tweet on Twitter, something, and let's open the dialogue. Any questions, though? Yes?
What are students' perceptions? I'm from the University of Maryland, and we're implementing a lot of technology. We have a new Terrorism Learning Commons on the second floor where there's going to be a lot of these great things you've talked about.
Right.
But already what we hear from some of the students is, oh, it's like we're buying technology just to have technology.
Yes.
So what is some of the reactions from the students at your school?
One of the first reactions that we had when we opened the new Matthews and IGT Knowledge Center, which cost over, I think, it was well over $100 million. The Surface, Microsoft Surface cost $12,000. Several students came and were talking about it saying, oh, that's where our tuition dollars go. No, that's not where your tuition dollars went. This was paid for out of a separate thing. You will always have some of them that are going to come out of the woods and say, No, that's not cool. You're really wasting this money. What I would immediately come back with, the other 99 are saying, that's awesome. I'm so glad that you have this available. We have an excuse in the library. That's our job. Our job is to buy expensive technology and share it with a number of other people. That's what we're supposed to do. If we don't do that, we don't have an excuse for not doing it. So I think the bigger question that I have is, how can you possibly justify spending $180,000 on a database that may see use, may not see use, but it seems really academic, or if it's only going to benefit 3, maybe 4 faculty members on the campus? How can you justify that and balance it against spending $300 on a widget here that leads to real results? I think the only way that you can address it is that you need to pay attention to the stories that you're building as they're coming together, because you need to lead with those stories. You have to be prepared with your elevator pitch, because the strongest naysaying voices that you will hear will be from within the library, from firsthand experience. You all know this. One of the things that we're very good at as information professionals is figuring out all of the different ways that it can possibly go wrong. And I would argue, yeah, that's useful. It's useful information, because then you weigh it and you say, should we reevaluate this or not? The problem is that we're not in libraries good at saying, yeah, you're right, and maybe 1 out of 1,000 people will be inconvenienced by that. We let that stop the deal altogether, instead of saying, yeah, that's right, but 999 other kids are going to find that to be very useful.
A real quick pragmatic part on that is engage faculty who have their students work with it, which we've done a lot, like programming the Microsoft Surface, working with the helicopter and all that. And we probably have time for one more question, although we'll hang around a little bit into the lunch period if people have questions.
Yeah, I was wondering, how do you provide support for these sorts of things? Students might not be comfortable with programming Microsoft Connect or how to fly a helicopter. So what level of support do you provide to allow them to express that creativity?
And that is, you're absolutely right, that is the secret sauce, because the librarians can't. I surely cannot. I don't stand a chance. But I know a number of kids, and I know the community that can. And so what my job is to know what's possible and who's doing it and working with it, and to connect this person that's interested with that. But absolutely no warranty at all. We're just providing this as technology. When I check it out to you, I know it's going to work. And I know that you can do this, and I can give you some pointers in the direction. But it really completely, it's just like the poster printing that Duncan was talking about, which I have to point out, the number of posters that is printed has literally doubled. Not only semester over semester for the last 5 years.
And a large part of that has been outreach to faculty as well. And we'll take one more question and then thanks everybody.
But the important point is it's only because those kids are the ones that are doing the work. If we have them come into us and say, I'll support you, I'm the expert, I'm going to solve your problem, I don't stand a chance, because we are so understaffed. We have like 20 librarians in the whole thing. But the kids can do it, and the kids can do a much better job, frankly. Yes?
So a kid loses a $25 book and charges them $25 or $25 in processing or whatever.
I'll
And they
answer
don't
that.
pay it, they don't get their transcripts or whatever. A kid breaks a $300 helicopter.
Right.
Well, we had the one kid who dropped a $6,000 HD camera into the Truckee River. It was called negotiation. We felt we had to impress upon students that we might charge them, but there was no way we were going to
charge the kid $6,000. So basically, there's, what do you say, that's a price of doing business. We're going to lose stuff. We lose books. You know, you take one journal, bound journal might have a value of, you know, $1,000 or more dollars, and those disappear as well. So,
And probably the median cost of the book on the shelf in my library is north of $300 as well. So you're absolutely right. I mean, these are costs that we're used to dealing with. One of the things that does, I really, you know, get strident about that because we often, with our staff, take that to extremes and say, well, you know, we're just really going to, I'm going to browbeat you over this when you come in to check this out. You know, this is really expensive equipment, and if you lose it, I'm going to hunt you down like a dog. No, that is so out of line. Every time I see that, I say, can you imagine a librarian on the circulation desk being allowed to say this when you brought a $300 book up to check out? It wouldn't fly.
it's you know, the old question, working sometimes with some people that work with you or for you, who the collection to them is more important than the customer. And I'm a customer service guy, so to me, it's the customer is more important. And we're out of time. We'll hang out
Yeah,
here
any
if anybody
questions?
wants to come.